Hi there. Welcome back to Haunting Vales. The air was rich with the scent of roses, jasmine, and death. At the heart of Paris's glittering society, a new fragrance had everyone enchanted. Until one evening, its creator collapsed before the crowd, the perfume bottle shattering beside her. The Perfume of Death is a story where beauty turns poisonous, and desire carries the scent of deceit. When Hercule Poirot steps into the perfumed halls of luxury, he finds more than fine glass and delicate aromas. He finds secrets bottled tight, ready to explode. Every note of fragrance hides a motive, every admirer a suspect. And beneath the charm of the scent lies a truth too dark to breathe in. Stay till the very end, for in this mystery, even the sweetest scent can mask the foulest crime. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Haunting Vales, where elegance and death walk hand in hand. Chapter 1: The Scent That Killed. The story began on a quiet morning in early autumn. The air outside was cool, crisp, and still carried the faint sweetness of dying roses. In the heart of London, on Brookfield Lane, stood a shop that never seemed to close its doors. The gold letters across the window read, Maison du Parfum, though the locals, too polite to attempt the foreign words, simply called it the Perfume House. Inside, the air shimmered with fragrance, vanilla, cedar, amber, jasmine. The scent clung to everything, the glass counters, the velvet curtains, even the light that filtered through the stained windows. And behind the counter, arranging bottles with surgical precision, stood Madame Celeste Vale, the most celebrated perfumer in London. She was known for one thing above all, her sense of smell. It was said she could identify a person's secrets from the perfume they wore. But on that particular morning, even she seemed troubled by the scent that filled her shop. A faint bitterness lingered, something metallic, something wrong. She frowned, lifted a vial to her nose, and inhaled carefully. Then she froze. Her eyes widened. She turned to her assistant, a nervous young man polishing a display case. "William," she whispered, "where did you place the bottle marked Essence Number 12? William blinked. "The new sample, ma'am? The one sent last night?" "Yes, the one sealed in the black glass. I put in the front window. You said it needed light to breathe." Celeste went pale. She dropped the vial she was holding. It shattered across the floor, releasing a cloud of scent, sweet, heavy, suffocating. She stumbled back, one hand clutching her throat. William rushed to her, horrified. "Ma'am, what's wrong?" Her voice came out barely a whisper. "The scent, it's not perfume. It's death." She collapsed before he could reach her. The newspapers called it a tragedy of the senses. A genius of fragrance, dead in her own shop. No signs of struggle, no visible wounds. Only the shattered remains of a perfume bottle and a smell that lingered for days, so thick and intoxicating that even the constables had to cover their mouths with cloth before entering. Within hours, word spread across the city, and before the day ended, one man arrived at the scene. Small in stature, perfectly dressed, with a gaze that seemed to read the world like a puzzle waiting to be solved. Hercule Poirot. He did not need to introduce himself. The inspector already knew who he was. "Glad you could come, sir," said Inspector Graves, a broad man with tired eyes. "This one's a strange business. We thought might interest you." Poirot nodded slightly, his hat casting a shadow over his face. "Tell me, Inspector, what do you smell?" Graves sniffed the air and grimaced. "Something sweet, like burnt sugar. Makes my stomach turn." Poirot stepped closer to the counter. He inhaled deeply, eyes half closed. "There are many scents here, but only one that speaks of corruption." He examined the broken glass, careful not to disturb the evidence. The air was still heavy with perfume, sweet, then bitter, then almost metallic. He turned toward the assistant, who stood trembling near the doorway. "You are William?" Poirot asked. "Yes, sir. You worked with Madame Vale? For nearly 3 years. Poirot studied his face. The young man's eyes were red from crying, or perhaps from the fumes. She was fine this morning, Williams said. Then she opened that bottle, and his voice broke. She said it wasn't perfume. Poirot nodded. Tell me, my friend, who sent this sample? I don't know. It came last night, wrapped in black paper. No name, no address. Poirot frowned, and she did not question that. She said it was from a client, someone who'd promised a new scent formula. She received secret samples often. Poirot's gaze drifted to the shelves, hundreds of bottles, some round, some square, some shaped like teardrops. But one spot near the window stood empty. He pointed. That was where the black bottle stood? Yes, sir. Poirot crouched, examining the floor. He picked up a tiny piece of black glass with his handkerchief. It glittered faintly. Then he looked closer and noticed something strange. The edges of the glass were not ordinary. They were coated in a thin, oily residue, faintly iridescent. He raised it to his nose, then stopped midway. Non, he corrected himself immediately. No, this is not a fragrance. It is a poison. The next morning, the papers were filled with wild speculation. Some said Madame Vale had accidentally poisoned herself while mixing new chemicals. Others claimed she had been cursed by a rival perfumer. But Poirot knew better. He sat in his flat, sipping coffee, surrounded by notes. On the table lay several vials sealed in wax, samples collected from the shop. He had already ruled out the common poisons. None of them matched the scent that had clung to the bottle. It was something more subtle, more deliberate, engineered for effect. He spoke softly to himself. Perfume is memory made liquid, but in this case, memory is used as a weapon. He turned the newspaper over and studied a photograph. Madame Vale, standing beside a model at a gala 6 months before her death. Her eyes were sharp, confident, her smile almost secretive. Behind her stood a tall man in a dark suit, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. The caption read, Madame Vale and business partner Mr. Alan Rycroft. Poirot leaned back. A business partner. Later that day, Poirot visited the Rycroft Laboratories, a sleek building on the outskirts of the city. The sign outside read Rycroft and Vale Fragrance Company. Alan Rycroft greeted him with an easy smile. He was in his late 40s, handsome in a cold way. Silver hair, dark eyes that revealed nothing. Terrible loss, Rycroft said. Celeste was brilliant, truly irreplaceable. Poirot's gaze moved across the office. Bottles of scent lined the shelves, labeled neatly. A faint aroma of sandalwood hung in the air. You worked closely with her? Poirot asked. For 5 years. We built the company together. Though she handled the artistic side, and I handled the business. Poirot nodded slowly. You had disagreements? Rycroft smiled thinly. Creative people always do, but nothing serious. Poirot's eyes narrowed. She received an anonymous bottle. A sample marked Essence No. 12. Do you know anything of it? Rycroft hesitated just long enough for Poirot to notice. No, he said finally. Never heard of it. Poirot's expression remained calm. I see. And yet, you have here on your shelf bottles numbered 11 and 13. Rycroft's smile faltered. Those were experimental scents. She named them herself. Poirot leaned closer. And what happened to No. 12? Rycroft's eyes hardened. It was destroyed. She deemed it too dangerous. Poirot tilted his head. Dangerous in what way? Rycroft looked away. It caused reactions. Strong ones. Some said it triggered memories so vivid they became unbearable. Ah, said Poirot softly. And now, she is dead because of it. Rycroft turned sharply. Are you accusing me? Poirot's tone remained even. I accuse no one. I merely observe that when one deals in sense, one also deals in emotion. And emotion can kill as swiftly as poison. That evening, Poirot walked alone through the rain. His thoughts moved faster than his steps. A poison disguised as perfume. A missing formula. A pot nahulit. But what motive lay beneath it? Jealousy? Money? Revenge? He reached the edge of the park, where a statue of an angel stood above the mist. The faint smell of jasmine drifted through the air. He stopped. Someone was standing beneath the statue, a woman dressed in black, holding a small glass bottle. She looked up as he approached. "Mr. Poirot," she said softly. "I've been waiting." "Who are you?" he asked. "My name is Lydia Vale, Celeste's sister." Poirot's gaze sharpened. "You have something for me?" She held out the bottle. "My sister sent this to me a week before she died. She told me, if anything ever happened to her, I must bring it to you." He took the bottle carefully. It was sealed in clear glass this time. Inside, the liquid shimmered faintly, pale gold, almost alive. "What is it?" he asked. Her eyes filled with tears. She called it the perfume of death. She said it was the last scent she would ever make. Poirot turned the bottle in his hand. The light from the lamp-post flickered across it. Somewhere, far in the city, the clock struck 10. He whispered to himself, "If perfume can capture the soul, then this one has captured a murder." And as the rain fell harder, Poirot realized that this was no ordinary case. It was a story written not in ink, but in scent, a fragrance that whispered of betrayal, obsession, and a killer who had turned beauty itself into a weapon. The hunt had begun. Chapter 2: The Memory of Poison. The next morning broke gray and cold. A thin fog drifted through the streets of London, muting sound and softening shape. Even the carriages moved slower, as though the city itself had stopped to listen. In his apartment, Poirot sat at his breakfast table, staring at the bottle Lydia Vale had given him the night before. It gleamed faintly against the dull morning light, gold liquid sealed in clear glass. The label bore no name. For an hour, he did nothing but look at it. He didn't move, didn't touch it, didn't breathe too close. Finally, he spoke aloud, his tone soft and deliberate. "Everything speaks, if one listens carefully, even a scent." He rose, placed the bottle on a tray, and carried it to his small laboratory table. There, under a magnifying glass, he examined the seal. It was perfectly clean. No tampering. He reached for a clean pipette, uncorked the vial slightly, only slightly, and drew out a single drop. Instantly, the air around him seemed to change. The scent was impossible. At first, it was warm, sweet as honey, gentle as memory. Then it turned sharp, bitter, metallic. Poirot closed the vial at once and stepped back, blinking away the strange dizziness that came over him. He whispered, "This is not poison in the usual sense. It is designed to deceive the senses, to lead one's mind astray." He wrote a note, "Possible hallucinogenic compound disguised as fragrance base." Then, beneath it, he added, "Intended effect, control or destruction of the mind through memory recall." He leaned back in his chair, thoughtful. Celeste Vale had been known for one obsession: creating scents that evoked memory. She once said in an interview that a truly perfect perfume could make someone relive their most powerful moment. What if someone had twisted that dream into a weapon? Later that day, Poirot visited the coroner's office. The body of Celeste Vale lay cold and still on the slab, a pale figure framed by the sterile light. The coroner, a small man with glasses too large for his face, adjusted his notes. "No signs of physical struggle," he said. "No bruising, no forced inhalation. But her lungs show faint crystalline residue, chemical, not organic. Almost as if she breathed in powdered glass." Poirot frowned. Could it have been dispersed through vapor? Possibly. Whatever she inhaled, it attacked the nervous system directly. Instant paralysis, then cardiac arrest. Poirot nodded slowly. And yet, she had time to speak before she fell. She said, "It's not perfume. The coroner shrugged. Then she realized what it was just before she died. Poirot turned to look at her face, serene, peaceful, almost smiling. To anyone else, it might have looked like a natural death. But Poirot saw something else. He whispered, "You discovered too much. And for that, they silenced you." That evening, Poirot returned once more to the perfume shop. It was closed now, sealed with police tape, but he had permission to examine it. Inside, the air was stale, heavy with the ghost of scent. He moved slowly, methodically. Every bottle, every shelf, every label, each was placed with precision. But near the back of the room, he found something that didn't belong, a faint outline on the dusted floorboards, where something heavy had once stood. He crouched, examining it closely. The shape matched a small chest or case, recently moved. He followed the faint trail of scratches that led toward the door, then stopped at the threshold. Someone had removed something important. He turned his attention to the counter where Celeste had collapsed. The surface had been wiped clean, but Poirot's eyes caught what others had missed. A single petal from a rose, shriveled and brown, stuck to the wood near the edge. He lifted it carefully with his tweezers. The petal was coated in the same iridescent residue he'd seen on the glass. He placed it in a small vial, sealed it, and whispered, "You left me a clue, Madame Vale." As he turned to leave, a noise startled him, a faint creak from upstairs. He froze. Then he called out softly, "Is someone there?" No answer, only the sound of slow, deliberate footsteps descending the wooden stairs. A figure appeared, a woman, cloaked in gray, her face half hidden by a veil. Poirot's hand went to his cane, more for balance than defense. "Who are you?" The woman paused at the bottom step. Her voice was low, steady. "I am her sister. You've already met me, Mr. Poirot." He frowned. "Lydia Vale. But you came to me last night." She shook her head. "I'm not Lydia. I am her twin, Evelyn Vale." Poirot studied her carefully. The resemblance was unsettling. Same eyes, same mouth, yet colder, sharper. "My sister's missing," she said. "You spoke to her last night?" "Yes. She gave me a bottle, one she said Celeste had sent before she died." Evelyn stepped closer, her voice tightening. "You must give it to me. It's dangerous." Poirot tilted his head. "You believe it is the cause of your sister's death?" "I believe," she said slowly, "that whoever killed Celeste will come for Lydia next. That perfume, it was never meant to exist. Then why did Celeste create it?" Evelyn looked away. "Because someone made her." An hour later, Poirot sat with her in his apartment. Rain beat softly against the window. Evelyn's hands trembled as she spoke. She was afraid, she said. For months, she received anonymous messages, each one demanding she finish the formula. She told me she was being watched. By whom? She never said, only that if she refused, they would destroy everything she'd built. Poirot listened carefully. "Did she tell you what made this perfume so special?" Evelyn hesitated. Then she reached into her purse and handed him a small photograph. It showed Celeste and Alan Rycroft standing beside a table of perfume bottles. But in the reflection of the glass behind them, a third figure was visible, a man watching from the shadows. His face was unclear, but the outline of his coat and hat were distinct. She said he called himself the Patron, a collector of emotions. He financed her research, then demanded she create a perfume that could reproduce fear itself. Poirot's eyes darkened. Fear? Yes. He believed if you could capture the scent of fear, you could control those who smelled it. Poirot sat back, silent. The logic was twisted, yet frighteningly human. A man of power wanting control not through violence, but through invisible influence. He whispered, "The perfume of death." Evelyn nodded. Celeste wanted to destroy it, but before she could, the patron sent her the final ingredient, a chemical compound she'd never seen. She said it reacted with the mind, not the body. Poirot said softly, "And then she died." The next morning, Poirot went again to visit Alan Rycroft. This time, Rycroft was less composed. His eyes were red, his hands unsteady. "You again," he said. "Haven't you done enough sniffing around my company?" Poirot smiled faintly. "It is not the company that interests me, but what it hides." Rycroft scowled. "I told you, Celeste's death was an accident." Poirot placed the vial Lydia had given him on the table between them. "Then perhaps you will explain this." Rycroft stared at it, visibly startled. His face drained of color. "Where did you get that?" "From someone who cared enough to protect her." Rycroft's jaw tightened. "You should destroy it." "Now." "Why?" Poirot asked softly. "Because that bottle," Rycroft said, "contains madness. It's not perfume, it's a weapon. It affects the brain's limbic system. We tested it. Those who inhaled it saw things. They lost control. It breaks the line between memory and reality." Poirot leaned forward. "Who created it?" Rycroft hesitated. "Celeste began it. But after she wanted to stop, someone else took over. The man who funded us. He said the scent could be used in warfare. Fear by scent, he called it." Poirot's voice turned cold. "The patron." Rycroft flinched. "So she told you?" "Yes," Poirot said. "And now she is dead. And your company is still funded by this invisible man. Where can I find him?" Rycroft shook his head. "You can't. No one ever sees him. He contacts us through letters, through messengers. He uses others to do his bidding." Poirot's gaze lingered. "Then perhaps he uses you." Rycroft's composure cracked. "You think I killed her?" Poirot didn't answer. He stood, took his hat, and said quietly, "I think you fear someone far more than the police." That night, as Poirot returned home, he felt the air grow heavier. Someone was following him. He crossed a narrow alleyway, paused, and turned suddenly. A figure stood in the fog, tall, motionless, wearing a hat. Poirot called out calmly, "If you wish to observe me, you might at least do it politely." The figure said nothing. Then, slowly, it stepped forward and placed a small object on the ground. A folded letter. By the time Poirot reached it, the man had vanished. He unfolded the letter. It contained only a single line, typed in red ink. "The scent of fear is already in the air." Hours later, Poirot sat at his desk, reading the message again and again. The city outside was silent. He looked toward the bottle of perfume, gleaming faintly under the lamplight. He whispered, "You have drawn the killer to me." Then, from the darkness beyond the window, he caught the faintest scent of something sweet, roses mixed with iron. He stood instantly. Someone had been here. He turned toward the door, every sense alert. But it was too late. A second later, a soft hiss filled the room. A vapor, sweet, golden, intoxicating, began to rise from beneath the window frame. Poirot's vision blurred. He staggered back, covering his mouth with his handkerchief. The air shimmered. For a moment, the walls seemed to melt, the room bending around him. And then, through the haze, he saw a figure, tall, faceless, watching from the corner. He blinked hard. The vision vanished. The vapor thinned. The window creaked open slightly, releasing the rest into the cold air. Poirot gasped for breath, steadying himself. And then he whispered with grim certainty, "The murderer has begun their final act." Chapter 3. The Fragrance of Lies. The morning after Genevieve's murder broke across every paper in London, the gray city air itself seemed to carry her perfume. Faint, ghostly, intoxicating. People whispered about it in cafes and drawing rooms, as though the very scent haunted them. But in Poirot's flat on Whitehaven Mansions, the atmosphere was different, focused, heavy, alive with thought. He stood at his window, hands folded neatly, staring into the drifting mist. "It is curious," he said softly, "how evil may disguise itself in beauty. The murderer hides behind art, elegance, and scent." Captain Hastings frowned from across the room. "You mean the perfume?" "Yes. It is the one constant in this case, the invisible thread. Poirot turned, eyes gleaming. We must ask mon ami, why was it created at all? To enchant? To kill? Or to conceal something else entirely? Hastings shifted uneasily. Well, the police think the scent might have been poisoned. That would explain Genevieve's death. Poirot shook his head. Non, there was no poison in her body. The perfume did not kill her, but it played its part. He paused, eyes distant. Tell me, what is perfume, Hastings? Well, a mixture of oils and alcohol, I suppose. Something to make one smell pleasant. Exactly. And yet, it is more. It is memory, emotion, identity. It could deceive the senses. The murderer, I believe, has used that power to hide something. Perhaps even to rewrite reality itself. That afternoon, they arrived once again at Maison de Lune, Genevieve's boutique. The shutters were closed, black ribbons tied across the door. Inside, the air was stale, and yet that familiar sweetness still lingered, faint and mocking. A young assistant, pale and shaken, stood behind the counter. Monsieur Poirot, it's been chaos. The clients, they're frightened. They swear they smell her perfume on the street, as if it's following them. Poirot's eyes flicked toward the row of crystal bottles on the shelf. Each was labeled with a different name: Serenity, Desire, Eternity. But one was missing. The bottle named Oblivion, he murmured. It was here before. Where is it? The girl swallowed. Inspector Graves took it, sir. Said it was evidence. Poirot nodded. Indeed, he's a man who collects facts. I collect meanings. He walked slowly through the shop, fingertips brushing the surfaces, glass, silk paper. Everything seemed to whisper her name. He stopped before the workroom door. Hastings observed. The door was locked. Poirot reached into his pocket and produced a small brass key, found earlier in Genevieve's apartment. It fit perfectly. Inside, the workshop was dim and untouched since the murder. The walls were lined with vials, powders, dried flowers. A single chair stood in the center, beside an empty perfume bottle and a stained handkerchief. Poirot knelt to examine it. Blood, he murmured, but not hers. It is old, perhaps from a wound, long forgotten. He rose and looked toward a shelf where dozens of handwritten notes were pinned. Recipes, formulas, and one single scrap that drew his attention, its edges burned. He lifted it gently. The handwriting was Genevieve's. To remember is to live twice. To forget is to be reborn. Beneath it, in darker ink, another line was scrawled by someone else's hand. And to kill is to erase. Poirot folded the note carefully into his pocket. This, Hastings, is not the work of an artist only. It is the confession of a soul divided. That evening, Inspector Graves arrived at Poirot's apartment. He carried a sealed evidence box. I had the lab test that perfume bottle, he said gruffly. No poison, no trace of anything harmful. But we found this inside the cap. He handed Poirot a small folded note, barely the size of a coin. Written in delicate ink were 4 words. She took what was mine. Hastings whistled. Sounds like jealousy to me. Graves grunted. Could be. But of who? Genevieve wasn't married. Poirot's expression darkened. No, but she had a lover. Graves froneth. You know who? Poirot gave a small nod. Edo. His name is Adrian Vale. They found Adrian Vale that same night in a smoke-filled jazz club on the South Bank. The man was striking, tall, sharp-featured, his eyes the color of cold steel. When Poirot and Hastings approached, he looked up with a slow, measured smile. I wonder when you'd come, he said. Everyone does, eventually. Poirot studied him in silence before speaking. Monsieur Vale, you were close to Genevieve Rousseau. I was, he replied simply. She made me something no one else could, a scent that smelled like truth. Truth, Hastings repeated. That's a strange choice. Adrian's smile faded. She said it was the only fragrance that couldn't lie. Poirot leaned forward slightly. And yet, lies are all that remain. Tell me, what happened between you? Adrian's eyes flickered toward his drink. She ended it. Said I was too dangerous. Said my temper frightened her. But I never laid a hand on her. Poirot's gaze sharpened. And yet your name was on a note. She took what was mine. What did she take? Adrian hesitated, then whispered my design. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. I was the chemist behind her perfumes. She was the face, the beauty. I created the formula she called Oblivion. She said it could erase a memory just by scent. I thought it was impossible, but she proved me wrong. Poirot's brow furrowed. Erase the memory? Adrian nodded. It was an accident at first. The fragrance contained something that dulled the senses, fogged the mind. A tiny exposure, harmless, but too much, and you could lose hours, days. Hastings paled. You're saying she used it on people? Adrian exhaled shakily. Yes, on clients, lovers, even herself. She said it was mercy. That forgetting was a gift. But she didn't realize someone else had found out. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Who? Adrian's voice broke slightly. Her assistant, the quiet one, Clara. That night, Poirot sat awake in his study long after Hastings had gone to bed. The storm outside beat against the glass, steady and relentless. On the table before him lay the burnt note, the perfume cap, and a photograph of Genevieve smiling beside her staff. He touched the photo gently. You wish to erase pain, he murmured. But you erased something far greater, the truth. He rose, pacing slowly. Clara, the assistant. Always present, always silent. Jealousy, devotion, or fear, which was it? He stopped suddenly, eyes narrowing at the photograph. There, in the corner of the image, almost hidden, was a reflection. A mirror on the wall, catching a moment unseen. In the reflection, Genevieve's hand held a small bottle, but the hand beside her wasn't Adrian's. It was Clara's. Poirot's heart quickened. Hastings! Hastings stumbled in, half asleep. What is it? The photograph, mon ami. Look closely, the reflection. Clara was not the assistant. She was the partner. The next morning, Poirot and Hastings returned to Maison de Lune. The shop was closed, but the faint scent of Oblivion hung in the air. Heavy now, suffocating. Poirot knocked once. No answer. Then, from within, a quiet voice. You shouldn't have come. The door opened slowly. Clara stood in the doorway, eyes hollow, hands trembling. The shop behind her was stripped bare, bottles shattered, papers burned. Poirot spoke softly. You tried to destroy the evidence. Tears glimmered in her eyes. She stole from me. My formula, my future. She said it was hers, all hers. And when I tried to stop her, she said she'd erase me. Like I never existed. Poirot stepped closer. So you killed her. Clara shook her head violently. No, I only meant to scare her. To take back what she stole. But when I went to her apartment, she was already dead. Hastings frowned. Then who did it? Clara looked up, voice breaking. Adrian. It had to be him. Poirot watched her carefully. Her hands shook, but her eyes told a different story. Not fear, but defiance. Clara, he said quietly, you have been breathing your creation for too long. The Oblivion is not just perfume. It has taken your memories, your truth. You no longer know what is real. Her expression twisted. Horror, realization, despair. Then maybe I did kill her, she whispered. I can't remember. Poirot nodded slowly. That, mademoiselle, is the cruelest murder of all, the one committed in darkness, even to oneself. He turned toward Hastings. Come, there is only one way to prove it. Back at the flat, Poirot laid out his evidence in perfect order. The bottle, the note, the burnt paper, and the photograph. Every mystery, he said, is a pattern, a scent trail invisible to most. And this trail has led us here. But there is still one scent I cannot place. Hastings frowned. "Which one?" Poirot lifted the perfume cap to his nose and inhaled. Then, with a faint smile, he whispered, "The scent of fear." He turned toward the window. Outside, the city lights blurred in the fog. Somewhere out there, the truth waited, unseen but inevitable. And as the rain began to fall, the air carried once more that haunting sweetness, the fragrance of lies. Chapter 4. The Last Breath of Oblivion. The night was long and sleepless. Poirot sat in his armchair, his small gray eyes sharp as blades, unmoving, thinking. The rain fell outside in thin silver threads, hissing against the windows of Whitehaven mansions. London slept, but not Poirot. Not tonight. He had gathered every piece, every scent, every flicker of deceit that clung to the case of Genevieve Rousseau. Yet one thing remained unspoken, one presence that lingered just beyond the reach of reason. The perfume called Oblivion. It was not poison. It was not science alone. It was something else, a creation born of obsession. And like every obsession, it demanded a price. When dawn finally came, the gray sky hung low, heavy as lead. Poirot stood before the mirror, adjusting his tie. Behind him, Hastings leaned against the doorframe, tired but alert. "Where are we going this morning, old chap?" Hastings asked quietly. Poirot didn't look away from his reflection. "We are going," he said softly, "to end this, once and for all." They arrived at the abandoned Maison de Lune just after sunrise. The streets were silent, washed clean by the night's storm. The boutique stood empty now, windows dark, the signs swinging faintly in the cold wind. Inside, the air was thick with the faint ghost of perfume. Oblivion still lingered, like a memory that refused to fade. Poirot moved slowly through the shadows. "She died here in spirit," he murmured, "though her body was found elsewhere. This place is the true crime scene." Hastings frowned. "You mean she was killed here?" Poirot nodded. "Killed, or perhaps erased." From the back of the room, a sound. A soft, dragging footstep. Poirot turned sharply. Adrian Vale stood in the doorway, pale, rain-soaked, his eyes hollow. "You came," he said softly. "I hope you would." Hastings tensed. "You shouldn't be here, Vale. The police." Adrian laughed bitterly. "The police don't understand what she did. But you, Poirot, you might." Poirot regarded him calmly. "You killed her, did you not?" Adrian shook his head slowly. "No, I loved her, more than anything. I tried to stop her, but she wouldn't listen. She said the scent was perfect, that it could free people from pain. But she didn't see what it was doing to her. It was eating her mind. She began to forget who she was. And when I tried to destroy it..." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small crystal bottle, the last remaining Oblivion. "She fought me for it." He swallowed hard, his voice trembling. "She fell, hit her head. It was an accident." Hastings took a step forward, but Poirot raised a hand. "And yet, you hid the truth. You staged the scene. You left her body in her apartment, made it appear like murder." Adrian's jaw tightened. "I couldn't let them think she'd lost her mind. She was a genius. I wanted her remembered that way." Poirot nodded slowly. "Ah, you wished to preserve her image, but in doing so, you destroyed her truth." Adrian's voice cracked. "What would you know of love, Poirot?" Poirot's eyes softened. "I know that love is not possession. It is understanding. You did not love her, monsieur. You worshipped her. And worship, when denied, becomes destruction." Adrian's hand trembled around the bottle. "Then what do I do now? Everything she made, everything we built, it's gone." Poirot stepped closer, his tone low but firm. "There is one thing left. The truth." He held out his hand. "Give me the perfume." For a moment, the room was still. Then, with a shuddering breath, Adrian placed the bottle in Poirot's palm. Poirot turned it slowly, watching the faint golden liquid shimmer in the light. "The last breath of Oblivion," he whispered. A perfume meant to erase, yet it has done the opposite. It has revealed. Later that morning, Inspector Graves arrived. He listened as Poirot spoke, his words measured and cold. Genevieve Rousseau died by accident. The evidence of struggle, the fractured glass, it all fits. But the true crime, Inspector, lies in what was done after. Adrian Vale hid her body. He lied to protect her name. And Clara, she destroyed the evidence to protect herself from the truth. Both are guilty in their own way. Graves sighed. So neither of them murdered her on purpose? Poirot shook his head. No, but their lies, their vanity, their fear, those are the hands that killed her. Graves nodded grimly. I'll have them both brought in. As the inspector left, Hastings turned to Poirot. You sound almost sad, old fellow. Poirot looked toward the shop's shattered shelves. Because, Hastings, this was not murder by hatred or greed. It was murder by beauty, the most dangerous kind. He picked up the note Genevieve had written. To remember is to live twice. To forget is to be reborn. Perhaps, Poirot said quietly, some things are not meant to be forgotten. That evening, Poirot returned alone to his flat. The storm had passed. The air was still. He sat at his desk and opened the small glass bottle once more. The scent rose softly, wrapping around him, sweet, floral, yet with something bitter underneath. A memory of something beautiful and doomed. He closed his eyes. In his mind, he saw Genevieve, laughing, alive, surrounded by light. And for a brief moment, he understood. She had not wanted to kill. She had only wanted to silence pain. But in doing so, she silenced herself. He opened his eyes, set the bottle down, and sealed it in a box. There will be no more Oblivion, he murmured. The world must remember. Poirot looked out over London. Gray rooftops, distant chimneys. Life continuing as if nothing had happened. The case is over, he whispered. But the lesson remains. Hours later, as the last light of evening faded, a soft knock sounded at his door. It was Clara. Her eyes were red, her voice trembling. They released me, she said. They said I wasn't to blame. But I can't sleep. I still smell it everywhere. Poirot gestured for her to sit. It will fade in time. She shook her head. No, it won't. I made it. I breathed it for years. It's part of me now. She looked up, tears glistening. Do you believe the soul can linger in what we create? Poirot hesitated. Then, softly, yes. But only if the creation was born from truth. She nodded, silent for a moment. Then she stood and placed a small folded note on his table. She wrote this before she died. I found it behind the mirror. Poirot opened it slowly. If my scent lives beyond me, let it remind the world that even beauty can kill. He folded the note carefully, his eyes distant. And so it does. That night, as the city fell into darkness, Poirot opened his window. The wind drifted in, cool, clean, empty. He breathed it deeply, savoring the absence of perfume. He spoke quietly, almost to himself. There are crimes that begin with hatred and those that begin with love. But the worst begin with desire, for perfection, for control, for the power to forget. He turned off the light. The room plunged into shadow, save for the faint glimmer from the box that held Oblivion. It pulsed softly like a dying heartbeat, then faded. Epilogue, the final note. Weeks later, a letter arrived at Poirot's door. It bore no return address, only a faint scent, lavender, and something darker beneath. Inside was a single line written in an elegant hand. The scent of truth never fades. Poirot smiled faintly. No, mademoiselle, he whispered. It does not. He placed the letter beside his case files, closed the folder marked the perfume of death, and extinguished the lamp. The perfume was gone. The murderer confessed. The world moved on. And yet, sometimes in the quiet moments before dawn, A faint sweetness filled the air of Whitehaven Mansions, delicate, familiar, eternal. The scent of a mystery solved, the memory of a life lost, the last breath of oblivion. If you've enjoyed this dark tale of beauty and deception, don't forget to subscribe for more Hercule Poirot mysteries. Your support keeps these stories alive, and perhaps reminds us all that even in the quietest moments, truth always leaves a scent behind.